Each badger marks the track with its own scent.
His black legs are short but very powerful for digging. The name badger probably comes from the French word bêcher, meaning digger.
Hello, everybody. Hello. It's 3-0 to Australia. The Ashes have been won, and we're here to pick the bones out of the Adelaide Test match and the repercussions for England potentially. But I think it's before we introduce Azeem. Hello, Azeem. We'll introduce Lucas because look at him. He's got his green hat on. He looks like a little goblin in that rectangle. He's got a big smile on his face. Lucas, well played. Australia, well done.
Oh, thank you, James. I went to the Adelaide Test match. I'm wearing the hat. Picked this up at the ground. Unfortunately, I picked up tonsillitis. So I've been on antibiotics the last 2 days. But as I said to you, James, I don't give a damn. The series is won. The Ashes are retained. You can call Kathy Bates, give her a sledgehammer, and she can break my ankles, and I'd still be laughing. It was just a tremendous series for Australia. And I warned you, James. I tried to warn you for months and months, but you wouldn't listen. You just wouldn't listen.
Is that Kathy? Yeah. An address for you to go and break through his ankles. Yeah. I'll send it to you later. I'll send it on WhatsApp. Okay. I mean, to be fair to you, Lucas, Australia have played consistent cricket all the way through. Ben Stokes has said they've been the better team. Everybody said they've been the better team. England have had very brief moments, but Australia's been a very professional performance by the Aussies.
Professional keyword. They did everything right. The pressure they put on England was tremendous, and England cracked under pressure. The day 5 proved that. We'll get into that a bit later, but when you lose two bowlers, where you lose Lyon, Cummins was nowhere near 100% fit. It was down to Stark and Boland. And what are the odds they did it? Again, a couple of stupid shots, but that's the pressure from the Australians. World class. And as I said, the Ashes retained. That's the main thing. I don't care how you did it. We did it. It's sad that you could only take us to 11 days of cricket, James. That's a bit sad. At least I thought you would have at least given us some kind of fight. But no, that's not to be. But that's all right. I don't give a damn. Ashes retained.
Before we crack on with Azeem, because there's a lot to get on with the England chat, but from your perspective, Lucas, and from the Aussies' perspective, where have you seen the deficiencies in the England side? What haven't they brought to the party? What could they have done better to have actually made this a contest?
Well, I mentioned this on the very start of the series we had, is that what happens when the going gets tough? Will they be up for the mental fight? And the answer is no. Every time Australia has brought the mental fight, this team has capitulated. We saw that in India, where they capitulated there, and they've done it in this series. In order to beat Australia, in Australia, you have to be a front runner. England have never, with all due respect, apart from the first innings when they bowled out Australia in the low total, late day 5 in the Adelaide Test, it's been an absolute beatdown. Ben Stokes has probably been the worst contributor of this, just not communicating with his team, being very quiet, not cheering, supporting along the bowlers. Mentally, just down. That's a huge problem. When it all seems lost, they just capitulate. Can't do that against a world fit class like Australia because they'll get you. They're very ruthless. Also, they're bowling too short, too wide. Australia have been very good with that. Australia have said this from day one, that we're going to produce friendly pitches, seaming paradises, and the English bowlers have bowled like it's a baseball pitch or a hard top, short and wide. They've got that completely wrong. I also said that on the first stream of the series, James, that you just can't bowl it short and wide. You have to at least pitch it up full. And they've failed to be anywhere near that this so far, this series, James. So that's where they've lost it, the bowling and the capacity to stay alive, and they've just been horrible in those two situations.
Last question to you, Lucas. England went into the Test match with Will Jacks as a spinning all-rounder, I guess. Shoaib Bashiri's been groomed for the last 2 years to be the saviour of the England spin department, has become a drinks carrier. Were you surprised that England didn't play a frontline spinner at Adelaide?
Yes. Well, regardless, I don't really rate Batia, but you've brought him to this tour as a frontline spinner, and then to move away from him, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. You've groomed him for 2 years. You've got him into the test system. You keep playing him for the last 2 years in games, and all of a sudden you don't want to play him. That makes no sense to me. That's coaching selection, and I think the coaching has been absolutely awful this series. Going to Adelaide, the Adelaide Test match, I actually spoke to a few English people, English supporters that came all the way from England. I managed to speak to a couple, and they basically said to me the same thing I'm telling you. Why would you bring a frontline spinner that you've groomed for 2 years that you don't play him? You play a part timer that's been absolutely taken to the cleaners. That makes no sense to me. But like I said, that's coaching. For me, Brendan McCullum is just lost the plot for me. And then what makes it worse? He comes out in that press conference to whatever he was talking to, BBC Sport. I'm not sure. I'm not sure of the show that he was talking to. And comes out and says, "Well, to be honest, we weren't prepared for that. We didn't think we could believe we could win this series." Well, mate, why are you here? You would have had more dignity if you just would have said we're not coming and we'll come next year. And then say, we should have just let the players play. Well, I'm sorry, mate, that's not really good enough. That's terrible. You had 4 years, 4 years to prepare for this test. I remember Ben Stokes getting questions 4 years ago about this Ashes test when McCullum was coach. So it wasn't like you've just turned up a month ago and knew about it. You've been preparing for 4 years, and it's been an absolute flop by all parties, especially the coaching of Brendan McCullum.
Okay, can you imagine if England phoned the Australians up and said, "We're not quite ready, we'll come next year"? That wasn't going to ever happen, Lucas, was it? Azeem, we had a chat earlier on today on the phone, but it's a mess, isn't it? It's an absolute shambles. I mean, the Bazball cult, as you call it, and the kind of arrogance that's been shown in not kind of paying any attention to the outside noise. I can understand why you maybe shield some players from the outside noise, but to not take any criticism on board and just basically pretend or believe that everything's fine and everything's going to work out all right is the height of naivety for me. And it's chickens have come home to roost, haven't they?
They have, and listening to Lucas says, you want to try and put up a fight and you want to try and push back on stuff, but the reality is you can't. I think, where do you start? When you start to dissect this, and this is the problem that they will find over the next few weeks and months, is when you step into extremes the way that they have, you've got a whole host of issues to try and sort of road back from messaging to individual players themselves. It's been a cult, and I find it's been fascinating to watch, really, to be honest, because I'm probably one of very few, and I'm not sure you're probably the same, one of very few people who don't have a horse in any of the races here, and you can just sit back and say it as it is. And watching some of the cricket media and the press and the ex-players and all the podcasts, etc. Try and dissect this has been fascinating as well, because I think that's been one of the part of the problem, because you've got people trying to protect their friends, and you've got people trying to throw McCullum under the bus to protect Key, people trying to protect Key to throw McCullum under the bus. The problem is, where does the accountability start, or where do you start to look at it to try and actually get past this or get through this? Because when you strip it back, you can go as far as back as how Rob Key was appointed. That you can literally go as far back as that, and then everything since. And you can look at it from a business point of view and all the money that's been wasted. You can look at the attitude and this Noosa trip, and now all the journalists are speaking and writing about what happened on the Noosa trip. These are murmurs we've heard for a while, right down to personnel of individuals and players. So it's a whole mess, and it's going to be not easy to sort out. And I'm actually going to, I'm not going to lie, I'm fascinated to watch it, having got to know some of the hierarchy of the ECB over the issues over the last few years. It's going to be nice to see it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to spin a lot of this.
There's not many people in England can spin anything, which is why Shoaib Bashir is on the side. Yeah,
Very good, James.
it's. I mean, one of the kind of Stefan Schemmett's piece was highly illustrative. I mean, I had somebody on Twitter basically say to me, you know, you can't take anything these journalists write with any credibility. But there's photographs that back it up. He's not going to to put this in ink unless he's firm on his sources, and he's probably seen it with his own eyes as well. And one of the things that came out of his piece was that they booked this trip to Noosa about 12 months ago, and yet they only realised they haven't got a bowling coach, and we're phoning around people like Dale Steyn about 6 weeks ago to say you're free because we got an Ashes and we haven't got a bowling coach. It kind of everything seems to be a little bit of a jumble, doesn't it? It's, you know, working out whether you should really know if you've got a bowling coach or not. And just before you come in on that one, we've talked about this in the past. Jeetan Patel seems to be stealing a living as a spin bowling coach because none of the spin bowlers that we've got are ever kicking on when under his. I mean, he's been in post now for 6 years, I think, something like that. Name me one spinner that's come into the England team that's kicked on and become better with tutelage. There's just no evidence for it.
You're preaching to the converted here. He's one of few that was part of the team before this cult as well. There's not a single spinner, but also having watched how the spinners have got on once they've been in the setup, I could name you several that he's ruined. And I'm not interested in X, Y, Z. You are the coach. That is your responsibility as a spin bowling coach. That is your fundamental responsibility. And I saw signs of Shoaib Bashir really starting to struggle start of last summer. And I saw signs of it. And the signs that I saw was someone was clearly trying to get him to bowl a little bit slower. And I've heard Rob Key talk about this in the past, and I've seen it and gone through it myself within the England setup, or that they try and accelerate development. That's the whole purpose of Loughborough. See, you can accelerate development with the batsmen. You can accelerate development with the fast bowlers. You cannot accelerate development, or you can't manufacture that acceleration with spinners because it's a skill. There's a reason through years and years of cricket that spinners get better later on in their careers. That's because of the experience of bowling and learning and getting to understand your body, because the skill that you're doing, the biomechanics of it, when put on a piece of paper and to do it are two different things. Look at Graham Swan as an example, right? If I was to break Graham Swan's action down from a biomechanics and what the perfect thing is from a point of view, you'd be like, oh my God, he's miles off. But boy, that bloke could literally spin the ball and land it on a 5 pence coin all day. So, and go on to Jeetan Patel, having played against him, having come across him, and having seen the bowlers that have gone in there, he clearly tries to make them like him. I'll go to Don Bess. Firstly, the way we understand spin, well, we don't understand spin. We don't know how to coach it, and we don't know how to captain it. But because we have a volume of counties and volume of cricketers, we do come up with young spinners, because in our age group cricket, the spinners get to bowl a lot. So they get to bowl a lot, and so when they come into the game, they're actually in a good place. But then I go to Don Bess. Don Bess, there was a period where you could just see that Jeetan was trying to get him to do what Jeetan had done himself as a bowler. I look at Mark Parkinson. Mark Parkinson, everyone knew all the way through that he bowled a little bit probably too slow. But his skill while bowling too slow was side spin. You carried him for a year, and then you could see the effect of him being around the England setup is someone was trying to get him to bowl quicker. And in that, from a real getting nerdy and technical here, you could see someone was playing around with his front arm. These are things that you can't just mess about with young spinners, because they might seem small interventions, but they end up being quite significant interventions when you're understanding your body and stuff. And then with Shoaib Bashir, I noticed it last year that someone was trying to get him to bowl a little bit slower, or try and get him to go a little bit more up and down, because he, with the tall height and all the delivery points, he just drove it into the ground. So there's been certain aspects, and you look from afar and you go, how the hell are you still in a job? And then you hear the interview that he came out with the other day. But then now I'm going to flip to the second part and how he is in a job, is the Noosa trip. So, there's the BBC article, which sort of hints at things, shares a little bit, and then there's other articles that have been shared, and then fans have actually, who were in Noosa, have taken photos and sent it. And you've got a job for the boys. This whole system has been a job for the boys from the offset. And that's why I said you can look back at where Rob Key was appointed. I was one of the people who actually thought Rob Key would be brilliant. I did. I thought he spoke about the game well. I thought, yeah. But once he's gone in there, he's been a complete, utter disaster. I mean, I don't think I can try and get across enough some of the things that he's done. Like, his friends have got jobs, whose friends have got jobs. Brendan has brought Tim Southey in as bowling coach, who's still playing, who has then not been able to come on this trip because their initial plan was he would come for the first test and then come to Dubai to play in ILT20 to come back. When media got hold of that and when this project was starting to get a bit more of a scrutiny, then they went away from that. They rang around Dale Steyn and then ended up getting David Saker last minute. And apparently, from what I'm hearing, Tim Southey comes back in Sydney. Who's paying for all this travel? Who's paying? It's an absolute job for the boys. And, Brendan and Jeeton and Noosa, I think they spend a lot of time together. And even the Noosa trip, by the way, for what it's worth. And I'm finding it, the reason I call it a cult is because you listen to people try and defend it and you're like, what are you even talking about? The Noosa trip, oh, yeah, it was a mid-thing break and, they played better, blah, 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 X, Y, Z. They drank for 5-6 days on the road. How is that high performance? Like, I've seen Sir Andrew Strauss post on LinkedIn about it. I tell you what, right? You can go and do anything with any set of wherever you want. If you've got players who are drinking for 5-6 days, tell me how that is high performance. And the Noosa trip, as from what I'm reading, is Brendan McCullum's wife, is Australian. It's their favourite holiday spot, and it's when they call it paradise and enjoying and taking in the world, and really, oh look, we're having a great time. The world is great. It is his definition of paradise. And tell you what, great if you can do it.
I think with the jobs for the boys bit, I can understand somebody coming into a job and wanting to surround themselves by people they know and trust. I can understand that, but then you've got to have accountability and you've got to have some scrutiny and you've got to make sure that all of that actually leads to high performance, haven't you?
James, know and trust, very important. Very important that your own team is someone you trust, right? But I don't know if I sent you the clip or just the podcast. There's got to be some level, method to the madness, right? I can go through appointments after appointments after appointments. What has Tim Southey done to deserve to get that spot? Actually, I'll go even further back. What did Jimmy Anderson do as a bowling coach? To step out of them forcing him to retire and putting him into that? I'll tell you what, because they shouldn't have forced him to retire. They were so scared of his response to that and his prominence that they thought, what, we'll try and just soften it like this and keep the sort of contract going like that. That's what they did. How is that high performance? Tim Southey, what has he done as a coach to to get that spot? You've got to earn your stripes. I can go on and on and on in it. You're just looking at the top end of this here, and then what I find incredibly like gaslighting from the media is like when they're trying to protect one to throw someone else under the bus. It's like, I listened to Steve Armisen on TalkSport the other day. He's like, oh, Brendan, he like two things. Sorry, Lucas, I'm taking so much of time, but it's so frustrating. He talked
No, it's so
about
good.
Brendan's
Take your
brainwash.
time. So good.
Brendan's brainwashed everyone. Brendan's brainwashed everyone. Brendan's brainwashed everyone. On the same sentence, just a little bit earlier, he was criticising the selection for this tour. Well, Rob Key's the selector. Rob Key's the one who's picked Brendan. And to say that Brendan's brainwashed everyone and basically Ben and Rob have had no part to play in this, I'm sorry. That just doesn't cut the mustard. So you've got this situation where no one can work out what the next part is going to be because, quite frankly, they've all been complicit in it in some way or the other. And I find it ridiculous to have read some of the predictions going into this series, you know, I've not played Test cricket, but I've played cricket. I've played professional cricket, and I know and understand the game, and I know and understand people. To see Sir Alistair Cook saying England's going to win 3-1, I mean, Swan's a cheerleader anyway because he's part of that setup, so I don't take anything he said. But to see so many people who should know better, who are actually travelling with the England team over and over again, to have not sat back and gone, what are we watching here? This is not all right. And, again, just to highlight on here for those that are listening, if you want to go back and see what Brendan McCullum's excuses were post Champions Trophy, and then you want to see what he said now, and you can basically, they're exactly the same. Because his solution to everything is, oh, we're trying too hard. We're putting too much pressure on ourselves. Actually, the problem is they're training softly. They are living in this world where nothing matters, and they want to take pressure off. In sort of how to put it, in a little bit of a fantasy world, it's brilliant to say, listen, James, what you're doing doesn't matter. The outcome of what you do, what doesn't matter. Go out there, enjoy yourself, whack it. If you get out, it's fine. You'll play 20-odd tests. In a fantasy world, that's brilliant. And the reality is, in English cricket, it is fantasy to live in every part of it until you get to the Ashes. The reality is it does matter. And this is professional cricket. This is international cricket. And everything matters. So you've created this cult where so many people have been hoodwinked by it. And they're like, yeah, this is brilliant. Oh, we're changing the game. We're saving the game. And you know what? We look so embarrassing in front of the world right now. And the Aussies are laughing at us, and rightly so, because, I thought Labuschagn's interview was brilliant. I thought Pat Cummins was brilliant. And, if you want to pick up a leader, I've not talked about Ben in this part of it. And I agree with Lucas. Ben, and the way Ben's behaved and continues to behave currently, is one of the biggest reasons we are where we are, in my opinion. And no one, Ben, Rob, and Brendan, none of them can have the excuse that they've not been backed. They've been backed to the tilt. And yeah, I've already seen Sir Andrew Strauss hinting at county cricket, because that's his part-time thing, isn't it? Anyway, he loves that. That's his solution to everything. I would be more looking at the way he appointed Rob Key in the first place, and then the way they've operated the system in the last 4 years.
I was going to come on to the county thing because it's bound to come into the crosshairs, because people will try and divert attention. Well, we'll try and work out what the reasons are for this. Andrew Strauss, as you mentioned, has already written something which suggests that, effectively says he was right a couple of years ago with his review, and it's all about the county system and the structure of that, and it's not providing the best against the best and all the rest of it. I just hope they don't just blame the county system. Every cricketer starts somewhere. Ben Stokes started in the county system, so did Joe Root, so did all of them, and it was good enough to bring them through. So it's good enough to bring the future through. What I think is wrong with the county system is that they're not actually looking at it. They're not actually using it as a benchmark as to who's actually playing well. There's plenty of players who I've seen in the county system that I think look like really good players, but because they don't fit this Bazball mould. And you remember Ben Stokes said about 2 years ago that Alistair Cook wouldn't make this team. Alistair Cook, who's second in the all-time run-scoring list, would not make this team because he bats in a different way. That is just ridiculously naive. And some of those quotes now, the Ben Duckett quotes, the Ben Stokes quotes go about Alistair Cook, now look stupid, don't they? I mean, they look stupid, to be honest. They look stupid at the time, but they look even more stupid now. Because the only way you can get away with having holidays in Noosa and drinking for 6 days and doing all the rest of it and saying stupid things is by winning, isn't it? Because then you brush them under the carpet and you move on. If you don't win, all of these things come back to bite you. And for Brendan McCullum, if you gave me the job as the head coach of the England cricket team, and I walked into that dressing room, I said, right, lads, we're going to have a bit of fun now. Let's go play some golf, and then we'll think about the cricket tomorrow. There's no repercussions. Ollie, you're going to bat number 3, but if you get out for naught, nobody's going to say anything. It's going to be fine. You can play whatever shots you like, and we're going to have some fun. We're going to, you're going to be a very popular coach. The atmosphere in the dressing room is going to be happy because everybody's getting away with murder. And until you get to Australia, and English cricket, rightly or wrongly, we don't look at series against Pakistan. We don't look at series against Bangladesh. We don't treat them with the same kind of gravitas. And that's possibly one of the reasons that we end up falling apart when it comes to the bigger events, because we need to treat every single test match seriously. It's a 4-year cycle. It ends when they go down to Australia, and then heads are on the chopping block as soon as it's finished, as soon as it gets to 3-0. And it's one of the worst performances that I remember. I think, if they hadn't taken it to 5 days, if they'd been beaten within 4 days, it would have been the worst ever performance down under. But because it's got to day 5, I think it equals the worst. But if Lucas, if I walked into your dressing room and said, you can all do what you like, have a good time, lads, you're going to love me as a coach, aren't you?
Well, of course I'm gonna absolutely love it. I'd be thinking as a player, well, gee, maybe I can take my foot off the gas here. Maybe I can cut corners, which isn't acceptable when you're in a marquee series or any series for that matter, to be honest. And you hit the nail on the head, James. I think England need to take every series seriously, and at times they don't. They think some series are a joke. The Pakistan series where they went 1-0 up, the second time they went to Pakistan, they thought that was a big joke until Pakistan decided to back spin wickets, and they didn't think that was funny. They went to India and they thought that was funny, and then it wasn't funny. And then they've talked cheap in the media, they've talked smack to Australia, and they've been absolutely embarrassed. 11 days of cricket, you're got to be absolutely kidding me. 11 days, you couldn't give me 2 weeks of cricket. 2 weeks of cricket. Embarrassing. And it starts with the top. It starts right at the top. If this was Australia, I'd be absolutely fuming. So, Azeem, I know you're paying. You can keep going, mate. I quite enjoyed your rant because I'd be doing the exact same thing if this was Australia. So, and I'm glad Australia took this very seriously. So I think England should look in their own backyard. Tim Southey, what has he done? Yes, he's a fine bowler. There's no doubt about that. The bowler that they should have taken was Jimmy Anderson. They should have played Jimmy Anderson in that pink ball test. They should have got him in the nets, got some petrol into the legs, and said, Jimmy, your best figures are in the pink ball test. You've got to play it. Just play it for one time. And they haven't. They've been arrogant. They've been selfish. They've been arrogant. And then what's made this worse, James and Azeem, Brendan McCullum has came out and said, well, mate, we didn't have the belief, we didn't have the belief. Oh, well, maybe I should have just let them play. What are you talking about? What do you mean just let them play? You've been trying to figure out a way for 4 years. Australia have been preparing this for 4 years. They made it quite clear from the beginning. We're going to make seeming paradises. Though Adelaide exactly wasn't like that, but the first two tests were. They made it very clear. We're not going to give you hard wickets. And then what happens when your bowlers come here? They bowl like it's a hard wicket, short and wide, trying to bowl 155 Ks and try to blast their way into the middle or lower order. And it hasn't worked. And when they've tried to come up with something different, it's been an absolute capitulation. And that's down to coaching. That's down to captaincy. And every time you look at Brendan McCullum, James and Azeem, he sits there with a piece of paper doing Sudoku like this. Why aren't you at least out in the dugout giving some support, right? You're there to, at the end of the day, you're there to coach them. You're not there to be your friend, all right? I said this last week. John Buchanan, for me, was one of the greatest ever coaches Australia ever had. He wasn't there to be their friend. He wasn't there to make friendships with Steve Waugh, Vicky Ponting, Shane Warne. He was there to coach them. He was there to improve them, or at the very least, maintain their skill. And I don't see that with this coach. I don't see that with any coaching panel like the spin coach Patel doing interview after interview. What the hell is he on about? What are you talking about? Why isn't there any players or Ben Stokes doing that what Patel has done? Why aren't they holding themselves accountability? It's almost like they're hiding. It's absolutely embarrassing. If this was Australia, I'd want everyone to be sacked. I think it starts at the top, Rob Keane. And then Brendan McCullum, and then if you want to go down a different route with captaincy, which I don't think you can because there's no one really else, but Ben Stokes is mainly the problem in this because, as I said, hang on, Dennis, when the going gets tough, he's capitulated. So what does that do as a captain?
there's many other captaincy possibilities, Lucas. I think that one of the biggest problems with English cricket is that they always just look for the next best player. You can guarantee if Ben Stokes was to move aside, Harry Brook would get it because he's seen as the next best player. He's the only player in the side. He's the next best player in the side that has never done it before, and he's already captaining the one-day side, and that would be a recipe for disaster for me. When Ben Stokes went off for 3 or 4 overs the other day, Joe Root took the reins. Harry Brook never said boo to a goose. He just stood at slip and kind of chewed his gum and sat behind his sunglasses. But there are captains out there. Maybe have a look at the counter captains and see which one of the best one of those is, and whether they could fashion it into playing Test matches. Azeem, when you you mentioned something which ended up becoming true. I think that they would end up playing within themselves. In the third Test match, and we talked about that in the second day. How hard is it for a professional cricketer? I remember talking to a coach before about how hard it was to go from being the county championship into a T20. Kind of similar kind of question. How hard is it to go from being? Lucas just mentioned that Brendan McCullum says he wished he could just let him play. Well, that's what he's been doing for the last 4 years, isn't it? So I don't know what that quote was for. But how hard is it from going to from a just go out there and play, lads, and express yourself mode, where they can pretty much go out and be attacking and get away with whatever they want to get away with. And some of them, to be fair, there's been some fantastic days under Bazball. There's also been some bloody awful days as well. How hard is it to go from that kind of mentality to going out there and actually playing the more traditional soak-up pressure, traditional kind of cricket when you haven't been doing that for so long?
Yeah, firstly, Brendan McCullum's a great example of LinkedIn waffle, isn't he? I had to take one of his quotes and put it into ChatGPT.
Can I just lean back, Lucas? You look like a garden gnome when you're back doing that.
Brendan McCullum is LinkedIn waffle, isn't he? I had to put some of his quotes into ChatGPT to ask it, like, what is this guy even saying? You know what? Simply put, it's confusing. And when pressure is on, the mind clutters. And the mind clutters because of too much of complication. And it was so clear for me, and this is not just what I said to you last week. I've been going back through the podcast that I do with Matt. These are some things I've been saying for a year. The problem you will have is the minute someone who's not delusional like Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes and Rob Key turns around and says to you, you need to rein it in. Actually, I was describing what would happen post these guys. So it was last year. It was around May time last year, and I can't remember what the conversation was. I said, the problem you'll have is the minute someone says rein it in, they're going to get confused. Because what they're going to then do is, right, they're going to go in next day, and then they're going to try and bat properly. Their techniques are not used to it. Their bodies are not used to it, and their minds are not used to it. Their movements are not used to it, right? So they'll just naturally just be trying. Now, Test cricket is difficult. Cricket is difficult, right? Within that, a good ball can come, or you can just be quite not there and just nick it. Now your mind is completely scrambled because you're like, hold on a minute. For 3.5 years, I've been putting my front foot down, not moving it anywhere, and just whacking with my hands. And I can remember all the great shots and that innings that I've had. And all of a sudden, I've been told to thingy, and I've just got out feathering it. And then you'll hear a coach like Brendan McCullum or a captain like Ben Stokes say, "Oh, execution wasn't there," or "We were a bit tentative." If anything, we were a bit tentative, right? So you can see the mind, right? The mind is one way, whack it, whack it, whack it. Then it's like, right, defend it, defend it, defend it. You've got out doing it here. You've got out doing it here. Now your mind and their mind, because tentative, when you get out tentatively, it looks terrible, right? So I've seen it, heard it described. It looks really bad. It actually sometimes I do get when the players say, you don't want to get out defending because when you're tentative, it looks terrible. Then your mind goes, shit, all this. Now I'm going to go back to whacking it. Then you go back to whacking it, and then you play a big shot, and then you get out. Now you're completely toast. And that's what you've seen play out. I expected it to happen end of this series. I didn't know the very guy who's basically forced everyone. And I'm using the word force because I think Ben's leadership has had blinkered eyes from everyone, to be honest. And I think there's parts of Ben's leadership that's been great, but it was never going to stand up to pressure because it was never reality. And the first person to blink and the first person to switch has been Ben. And, I think if it ends up 4-5-0 and you hear words like weak and stuff, well, that's been brought into the public domain by Ben Stokes, the captain. And this is why I find it, I don't find any way Ben can carry on because them players have seen it. And players won't forget. They've seen it. They've seen it that something he says, and I can again give you examples. Ben Foakes, best wicketkeeper batsman in the world, gets dropped. Right? Shoaib Bashir, he's going to be like Ashwin. Well, Jeetan Patel said this. He's as good as Ash. He's going to be as good as Ashwin. Blah blah blah. Dropped last minute. Or he's our guy. Dropped. So they've already seen that his words and his actions don't match up. So next time he asks them to do something, that person on the shoulder, that little voice at the back of the head is going to be like, not sure. And listen, he was good enough to find a way of himself scoring runs. For what it's worth, I think his first innings knock was one of the reasons England found themselves in the position they did, because he actually batted for himself at a time when the Adelaide pitch was at its flattest. And if you're telling me Ben Stokes doesn't have the ability to be able to just bat at a strike rate of 49, 50 without taking risks, then you have no idea what cricket is. He made a very conscious choice, and he made it in the end of the Gabba test, that he's going to show everyone how to play. Well, you know what? He needs to try and snap out of what he's going to do and realise that captaincy is very much about what your team's going to do.
A lot of cricket's played inside the brain. In it, what's the difference between Australia and England? I mean, you take a talented player out of the county scene, and there are plenty of talented players in county cricket, and you put them into an England shirt, and they seem to just kind of like wilt under in the real. We all know with cricket, you get kind of sessions which don't really mean a lot. Then you get certain little 20-minute sessions where it really matters. I always keep harking back to the first test where Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne for about 30 minutes wore a few. Jofra Archer hit Steve Smith on the end of the elbow. He hit him again. He got one on the other shoulder. He was hopping around. There were kind of balls flying all over the place. But they gritted their teeth and they saw off that half-an-hour session. They protected the batters that were going to come in next, and Australia went on to win that test. That was very much, I'm fighting for this badge. I'm fighting for my country. I don't care if this is pretty. I don't care if this is ugly. I don't care if I get bruised and battered. I'm going to you're going to have to cart me off on a wheelbarrow if you're going to get me out here. That's in the head, isn't it? That isn't technique. That's nothing to do with how good you are. That's in the head. Where are England lacking mentally? England are lacking somewhere, aren't they?
Yeah, and you know what? We always look at the wrong things. So I mean, firstly, simply right, Australians are winners. Everything that they do, they are winners, right?
Not,
and if
not all of them, some of them come on this podcast wearing a green hat.
right, the way their mentality is built up, they are winners, right? So like Lucas said, if this was the other way around, and you've seen Australia, even actually Perth, end of day one, they were turning on their own team, right? They were turning on their own team. Now you can see that as turning on them, or you can see that as demanding the highest possible, expectations. So there's that. You look at what we criticise is county cricket. These Australian players come and add a lot to their game from county cricket and talk about how it's added to their game. People now, and again, it's like these ex-players, they live in this world of what it was like when they played. And, Australian grade cricket and club cricket might have been unbelievable when some of these ex-players played. It really isn't now. Actually, when you strip behind, and you've already seen it, this thingy, they couldn't find an opener, right? They've got Weatherall in there, right? When you strip behind these guys who are going to retire at some point, at the minute, they don't have that talent ready like Australia has had in the past. But what did they have? They had grit, they had determination, and they got stuck in. I don't believe in the whole, run for the badge, etc., because I think, we just need to step away from that. But what they do have is they get stuck in, they understand the game, and they just simplify what they do. Cricket is a very simple game. Whereas in England, what we do, first thing, everything we do is mediocre, right? Everything, the way we think about the game, the way we understand it, and then we've actually, and I'm going to be brutal here because fuck it, who cares? We've gone and got a coach and a couple of coaches from New Zealand. Now, great guys, lovely guys, New Zealand. They don't win nothing either. So we don't have winners mentality. And then within our sort of system, we complicate matters to a level that is, when if you just put someone in a room and go, by the end of the day, they're going to be like, right, I'm not interested in doing this. It is, we complicate matters to a level that the game doesn't need it. Cricket is a very simple game. You do simple things and you do it well and you do it for longer and you do it consistently and you do it over and over again, you've got a good chance of being successful. And then everything else comes away. Yeah, obviously there's other parts to it. And one other thing, and just to finish off, we don't. I think it's in our society we don't actually solve a problem. We we try and brush around the problem by creating another problem, no matter what the issue is, and that's similar within our cricket. Whether it's someone's got a technical problem, at the minute, all our coaching's about empower them and do this and do that. And it's like, well, you know what? If there's a technical problem, we've got to sort the freaking thing out. It ain't gonna go away, right? Without sorting it out. Labashang's a great example for me, just before I let you guys come in, of someone, he came in, right? He had a lot of success. He struggled. Can you imagine? Would we drop someone like a Labashang? Would we have dropped him? I don't think we would. I think we would have worshipped him. We would have given him hero status. Anything and everything that he does would have been look at this. Oh, he's so cool. He goes out and gets drunk. Oh, he's so cool just because, Australia dropped him. He went back. The determination. He simplified what he needed to do to come back, and he's come back a better cricketer. We won't do that. I would seriously at this point consider, just as a matter of a message, and consider is at this stage I'm only at the consider point. I want to see what happens over the next few weeks. I would seriously consider dropping Harry Brook as a message, because I think it might be stuff like that we need to get rid of this cult, because the way he has carried on, and now reading how he's behaved on the Noosa as well, that is your vice captain. That is supposedly your generational talent, right? And we've got, no one is turning around and going, sort yourself out. That's not good enough. Can you imagine? Can you imagine in Australia, if he behaved like that in club cricket, they'd drop him to grade 2.
Absolutely.
So that's really fundamentally what the difference is. And
I'll just go. We've got a few messages coming as well whilst we've been chatting, and thank you for your messages. Thanks for getting in touch. We've got Garav saying, do like and subscribe. That's on all the channels. We're on the Garav Ayan podcast channel as well as on the Cricket Badger platform. Sumit Singh says, only chance England can win the Ashes if they change it from cricket to football. I don't think they'll even win with football, not at the moment. And he says, Australia's a complete professional side with better skills. Admit it, no net can change the fact your bowling is like school team in front of the Australian bowling.
Correct.
To be honest, that's one of the things I was going to mention was the batters seem to be getting a lot of the Ollie Pope and Zach Crawley have been singled out mainly. It's the batters that have been getting the pelters, but I think the bowling has been seriously inconsistent all the way through.
Abysmal, embarrassing, shocking, and I think the reason the batters have got it, because none of the batters ever get dropped. I think that's the reason the batters, and it's like one ball, but actually the bowling, when you look at it, and again, you can look at individuals and personnel, but also you can look at the plans. Chris Walks was opening the bowling for us throughout the summer, knowing full well that we weren't going to bring him here. So we were coming to this tour, all our eggs in the Mark Wood and Jofra Archer basket, and that's it. And then also, again, I talk about, some of these ex-players trying to make, talking about it like from when they played. It's been so clear to everyone, and it's been spoken about, the pitches in Australia have changed. The pitches in Australia are not just running ball fast and faster and faster. Sam Cook, what does he need to do? We're playing for one game and then we decide that that's not good enough. There's varying reasons for it. I think the personnel was always wrong. I think the way Ben captains them is shocking. And this is not just a Ben thing. This was happening under Ruti. For some reason, we think that we're going to run in with, well, one bowler who's really quick, two bowlers wouldn't thingy, but not really Mitchell Johnson pace. And we're going to bounce international batters in Australia out. It doesn't happen, right? So I don't know why we start bowling short for no reason whatsoever.
It's short ball theory where we get 5 men back at the deep square.
Oh.
And just wait for Australia to make a mistake. And they do it for too long as well. I mean, I can understand a short ball for me is a surprise delivery, and you can throw in a Yorker when the field's back, throw in a Yorker as well because it might be a double bluff. But you might change it for 1 over, or 3 balls or something, just to see if you can get something, but not do it for half an hour. It just makes no sense. It makes no sense at all.
Yeah, agreed. Fully agreed.
We've got, Rishi says he's a big fan of Coach Lucas, and he's saying that you look very nice in your green hat. Rishi, you need to get out more. Rishi says England is lacking intent. Lee Moody says, yes, we are winners. He must be Australian. I think he must be Australian. Is Lee. And he says, we'll always be strong to win a game and play tough with smart cricket. England lacks smartness and mental strongness. Rishi says Brook is a generational talent. I agree with you though. I think I think Harry Brook can be anything he wants to be. I think Harry Brook could be really, really, really good, but he's got to take it more seriously. The press conference he did before the 3rd test, I found embarrassing when he sat there with a little.
It was.
Sat there.
It was embarrassing. It was patronising, disrespectful,
and all that kind of nonsense.
But he wasn't actually. And this is what frustrates me, because if I was in that room and you listen to the whole press conference, he actually says the little soundbite that everyone wants to hear. They go and write that. He actually also says, when you sort of strip it back to him, is like, I'm at my best when I just execute. I take it on and execute it. So so deep down, what he really thinks is that, he just needs to execute it better. And what he said as part of it is, I'll rein it in. And they're muddled. But I sense, again, when Ben Duckett has made some of the comments he's made, Ollie Robinson, etc., people have been like, oh, that's Ben being done. It's been all of them. And actually, you can tell where it's come from. These comments are not come in isolation. This is how they speak internally, right from the top. Because actually, I could bring you, and I think I posted a clip last week about Rob Key and 75-mile-an-hour bowlers, in an interview. I can show you interviews in the last, 2 months between from Rob Key to Brendan McCullum to Ben Stokes to literally any of them who have been in front of the camera. They've been an absolute gift to to the Australian media, and they have made themselves look exactly what they are at this stage: arrogant, entitled, and privileged.
Lucas, let's finish with you today, because obviously you've won the Ashes or retained the Ashes. We're kind of losing that in the kind of the England barrage, but what Azeem said something there which I've been thinking about for a while, and this is why I thought it was a really good opportunity for England this series, because I don't think this is vintage Australia. There are some deficiencies in this Australian side which we haven't really exposed, and when you look at the bowling attack, everybody's like 35, 36. Nathan Lyon's 39. There's not a huge amount of miles left in some of those legs out there. I think back to kind of like 10 years ago and before, when pretty much every single county had a world-class batter. Darren Lehman at Yorkshire, Adam Voges at Notts. You had them everywhere. Mike Hussey was at Durham. They were kind of all waiting in the wings for their chance with Australia, because the Ricky Ponting and co had the middle order places belted up. But as soon as they got the chance, they went in and scored centuries because they were ready and they'd served their time. There didn't seem to be quite as many waiting in the wings at the moment in terms of batters that are kind of ready for Test cricket. They're going to come in and replace a Labuschagne. You haven't got necessarily the bowlers. I mean, I know you like the guy that played for Notts at the start of the season, and he looked decent and probably deserves his chance. But There always used to be about 20 or 30, it seemed, Australian cricketers that were test match ready, just waiting for their turn. Doesn't seem to be that at the moment.
No, you hit the nail on the head. Compared to 15, 20 years ago, we had wonderful batsmen even in the Shield. Jimmy Marr from Queensland, fantastic player. Martin Love, fantastic player. Phil Jakes had to wait a long time, because of Hayden and Langer. And even he got limited opportunity. So our Sheffield Shield last 15, 20 years has been extremely, extremely strong. That's now probably gone away now. We take the Sheffield Shield very, very, very seriously, especially our final, a lot more seriously than England, I can tell you that for now. But to answer your question, we have got a couple of young kids. We got Kellaway from Victoria. I think he's a real good player. A young opener, scoring hundreds already. He's only 23, 24. Jalen Goodwin, the son of Murray Goodwin that played for Zimbabwe, he's been making hundreds for WA. So there are some. Obviously Sam Constance, you got Renshaw, who've already been there and done that. So there is a few, but there's really not anyone that's really dominating the Shield. There's no one that's averaging 50. Like I said, all these players, Hussey, Marr, Martin, Phil Jakes, they were averaging 50 and they still couldn't get in this team. There's really no one that's averaging that kind of stats now, which is a little bit disappointing, but that's also pitchers as well. We have a lot of bowlers. I think, like I said, we've tried 2 domestic bowlers this series. No disrespect to Nisa, but Nisa's not a test bowler. So we've tried 2 domestic bowlers and we've won 2 tests with them. So our bowling is very strong because the pitches helps. I think when we lost to India the second time, it was almost a line in the sand game. A line in the sand series. I think you learn more from your losses than your wins. And when they lost to India the second time, all hell broke loose. There was questions around captaincy, questions around players, sackings. Justin Langer lost his job. And Australia, from that point on, would not make those pitches anymore. They'd make green tops, seeming paradises. So that's kind of effective. That's kind of reflected, in the domestic season in the Sheffield Shield. Even Jake Retherwood has had to wait a very long time. And even when he was batting on South Australia, it wasn't like he was averaging 30 or 40 or 50. He was still in the low 20s. He's gone to Tasmania, learned his craft. He's had a wonderful season last year. He averaged over 50, and for that he's been rewarded with selection. So not much depth with batting. With bowling, there's a lot more depth. The volley that you talked about, Fergus O'Neill, I can't believe he's not played a test. All I hear about him is that he bowls 120, 125, doesn't make it. That annoys the hell out of me because, one, I've been through that. As I don't know if Azeem knows this, but I was a Div 1 bowler. I was actually a captain for a while of a Div 1 club. And I got told by a state selector I was too slow, and that I still haven't forgave that person because, when you get a bowler like Chad Sayers who plays Test cricket, and I was faster, with all due respect to Chad Sayers, who I know personally. I don't want to disrespect him, but I was quicker than Chad Sayers. So when you hear that pisses me off. And when I hear Rob King hear that, that's not right. That's terrible. That's kicking a bowler while he's down. I think Sam Cook is a tremendous bowler on counting level. He should have played this series. A pitch like this would have actually suited him. Suited bowler. It suited Nisa. Nisa took a 5-wicket haul in the second innings.
I've been talking about Scott Boland in that respect for a while. If Scott Boland can have the success he does in Australia, then Sam Cook can. Can we finish with one last comment? That I just want to draw. I tweeted the other day about this, and it was again on the BBC, where Darren Lehman was talking about the fact that he, as a county coach, he's head coach at Northants, didn't know who the selectors were, and the England selectors had never even spoken to him, which just seemed ridiculous to me. You basically got a head coach where surely a selector should sidle up to a head coach and say, "Can I just borrow you for 20 minutes? Can you tell me if you've got any good youngsters? Who's impressing you with amongst your own 11? And of the teams you faced this year, have you noticed anybody that we should be looking at? You know, pick the brain, because Darren Lehman knows what he's talking about when it comes to international cricket and what's required. He was the head coach of Australia, for goodness sake. He played Test cricket, scored tens of thousands of runs, and he's currently a county coach and knows the county game. So it just makes no sense not to be talking to people like that.
Oh, when I heard that, I thought that was just stupid. Whether Rob Key or the uppers like it or not, that is your premium, tournament. The county is your premium red ball tournament or competition, whatever you want to call it. You know, whether you like it or not, you have to respect it. With all due respect, as you mentioned earlier, Joe Root, Ben Stokes. But let's go back even further. Let's go back to that fantastic 05 series. Much as I hate to go there, Simon Jones, Flintoff, Michael Vore, Trescoffic, those were all players part of the county. Kevin Peterson, remember when there was a lot of speculation with Graham Thorpe and Kevin Peterson who they should play? They picked Kevin Peterson because he's his form in the county. And what a decision that turned out to be. He was a player of the series, I think, from memory. So you must respect your premium tournaments or your premium competitions like they do in Australia. You make runs at Sheffield Shield level. You take wickets at Sheffield Shield level. You will be in the Australian team. Hence, Doggett, he was the leading wicket taker last year for South Australia. Jake Rethel, the leading run scorer for the Sheffield Shield for Tasmania. Both got selected. So it's very, very crucial. And Jake Weatherall has been fantastic. He looks like he belongs. He's got faults here and there. But Doggett didn't look out of place by any means. So you need to reward your premium competition. And the way they've mistreated it, I think, is an absolute disgrace. Absolute disgrace. It's been taken over by the 100, taken over by a competition that does not do anything for anyone. You can, according to me, I know some people might like it because it puts bums on seats, but anyway, helps the ECB their coin purse, James. But I don't give a damn about that. I want players to play, red ball cricket in those competitions, even county twos. County twos for a while during that period was a strong competition. You had to make hundreds to get even in the 110. And they've neglected that. So if you're going to neglect that competition, well, where's the line? Where do you draw it? And for me, they're picking players that are not producing well on these county pitches because they just don't care. So I feel sorry for a Sam Cook. I feel sorry for I think a James Rue who's scored centuries for Somerset. It doesn't look like they're going to get in. I feel sorry for those kind of players. I
think they'll get in if there's a regime change. Azeem, did you catch the question I asked there about Darren Lehman's comments about never having spoken to his selector and from his position as a former international coach and what have you? Just it seems to be a bit strange that the head coaches around the circuit are not being spoken to. Looks like Azeem's having problems there. We'll leave that with your answer, Lucas. It seems massively strange to me that somebody like a head coach at a county is not being asked about what he thinks of the county setup and who might be the potentials. It looks like Azeem's back. We've got Azeem twice on the screen now. We've got him frozen and we've got him not frozen. I'll remove the unfrozen one. That question I was just asking Lucas there. Darren Lehman had said that as head coach in Northants, obviously former Australian head coach, former Test player, played a hell of a lot of county cricket, that none of the selectors had even spoken to him. He didn't even know the names of selectors for England. You'd think that as a selector, whether it's Lehman, whether it's the coach at Worcester, whether it's the coach anywhere, you'd go and have 20 minutes every now and again to say, who have you seen? Anybody standing out for you? Anybody's impressed you?
Yeah, I mean, do you know who the selector is?
I only know because I saw the pictures of them like a rogues gallery this morning on something. I didn't before this morning, no.
So, I think that's the thing because Rob Key initially was supposed to appoint selectors and then he didn't bother appointing selectors. And then he brought Luke Wright in to be a yes man. And he's spoken about that he wants people to agree. And and he doesn't want Ben and Brendan to be challenged, or Brendan and Brendan not to be challenged. I don't know what's happening below that, because for as long as I've been involved, there's always been a scouting system, and there's been people going out and watching, and having them conversations. Whether it's with spinners and stuff. So I do find that a little bit surprising to hear. I think Darren Lehman's only been a year. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to go out of my way to speak to him either. But that being aside, it's a little bit, I think, reflective of this environment and this management, that they just don't know what they're doing. They're just, again, I put my hands up. I was one of the ones, like I said, who thought Key would be great, and he's been an absolute shocker, quite frankly. There is not one facet of anything that I can turn around and go, actually, they got that right. And like I said, multi-year contracts, the appointment of the coaches from the offset. People have forgotten Matthew Mott. At every point of decision making, they've got it wrong. And it was always going to come back to bite. I saw actually a LinkedIn post this morning by a gentleman who used to run the coaching program, the high performance level 4 coaching program, and he left about a year and a half ago as well. And because he's not a prominent name, it's not going to get picked up. But he pretty much, without saying it, he was talking about England team and that environment, right? He pretty much basically said that, if you be arrogant, then you might be able to sort of get round it for a little bit, but in the end, the outcomes and the results will expose you. That's pretty much what he was saying, but it was in a lot of LinkedIn waffle, and trying to say that he was just talking about it generally from a leadership point of view. Simple.
Before we finish, we got a few messages coming in as well as we're going through. Tim's on. Tim Wilton Davis says sack Key, and he basically mentions your frozen picture at one stage. Azeem says Pope was also frozen at the crease. Rishi wants us to talk about Ollie Pope. I mean, let's finish off then with England's personnel, because you could argue. I mean, I was actually quite impressed with Zach Crawley in that test. He actually knuckled down. He actually knew where his off stump was. He actually looked like a test player in his last innings. He was a decent knock by him. If he played like that every time, I'd never have a complaint about him at all. Ollie Pope looks shot at the minute. He looks absolutely gone for me. And when you're struggling, and then you edge one, Labuschagne takes a blinding catch, doesn't he, to kind of rob you of any more chances. Whereas if you're doing well and you're on form, that flies through for 4 runs and everybody forgets about it. So it just seems to be stacked against Ollie Pope at the moment. Of the players they've got out there, 4 years ago, I read the list. There was 4 years ago. There's Josh Buttler and a few others that had never played Test cricket again because England got battered and they ended up being the fall guys or the people dropped. Who would be the fall guys for you, Azeem? Who do you think's careers or certainly kind of short-term chances with England are going to be limited off the back of these results?
Oh God. I think short term you've got to. I think the easiest one will be Ollie Pope. Yeah, I don't think you can argue with it. I personally, again, I think Brandon Carter has been brilliant in his short Test career, but the role that he's been asked to do, I don't think works in Test cricket. And at best, he's a first change bowler, and unless he's going to fix up and start just pitching the ball up, if all that England expects from him and all that he's going to do is bowl it short, then I don't know how he continues to play. But he has bowled well in Pakistan. He's bowled well at times, because they've practically taken a bunch of young lads who have not had anything before. I don't want to sit here and say that's the end of their careers. I just don't think there is anyone. You know what? If anything, there's the captain himself if he wants to, and that's just if he wants to give it the finish. Apart from that, I don't see anyone that's going to.
Your audio is just breaking up a little bit on us, Azeem. So finish the podcast anyway, because I think we're at the end of this. We got to the hour mark, and I mean we could probably talk about this for about 5 hours because there's so much we could hang on with the England side. Sorry, you won't come back in, Lucas. You always do this to me, Lucas. I'm right. I start round, start kind of with into a conclusion.
Well, yes. Well, I've been disappointed. I've been disappointed with 3 English batsmen. I've been disappointed with Ben Duckett. I've been disappointed with Harry Book. I've been disappointed with Joe Root. Yes, he scored that fantastic 100. Finally the weight of the earth is off his shoulders. But from that 100, he's been terrible. Those are your 3 cornerstone pieces, and if they're performing poorly, you're never going to win. So I just wanted more from them. How many starts have Duckett got this series, and then thrown it away? Same with Root, playing away from his body. Getting a lot of bowled, a little caught to the slips, and Pope has just been an absolute train wreck, to be honest. But those are the 3 batsmen that really let me down, James.
When you say you wanted to see them do better, you really didn't want to see them do better, did you? Anyway, thank you, Azeem. Thank you, Lucas. Congratulations again, Lucas. Through gritted teeth, I say well played, Australia. And thank you, everybody out there, for watching. The Christmas tree is next to me. I've got a little Santa there. Have a very nice Christmas to all of those that you celebrate. If you don't celebrate it, have a very nice time anyway. And we'll see you again very soon on the Cricket Badger podcast. Cheers, everybody.